This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so abortion is a very hot topic now with the new law that came out in Texas, which is being evaluated if it's constitutional or not, which awards punitive damages or attributes punitive damages to anyone who's even helping someone get an abortion. And with a more conservative Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade is always coming back in, and it touches on the core values of religion and a civil society. We have the sanctity of life, the right of life for the unborn, and then we have violation of privacy and a woman's rights to decide. And we have our pro-life, and we have our pro-choice, and it gets very, very difficult, very convoluted. And we have on one side, we have Roman Catholic, very extreme, and then you have the pro-choice permissiveness, also very extreme. And as could have been assumed, Judaism has a much more nuanced view on this, and it's not black or white, but like we said, it's a lot more nuanced. So let's just get started with a little bit of the background. Okay, there was a survey taken that in the year 2008 there were 40 million abortions. 20% of pregnancies ended in abortions, and in New York City, it's been a 40% abortion rate, which is really quite frightening. Quite frightening. We'll discuss later on a little bit, actually, a case where money was the issue. And there are many organizations in Israel that if the issue is monetary, they are there to help carry that family through and to make sure that a child is not lost because of that. But 40% is really quite frightening, at least in my mind. Let's look at number two. Let's look at the background. Okay, in 1821, Connecticut was the first state to criminalize abortion. It banned the selling of abortion-inducing poison to women, but did not punish women who took the poison. Right? The Texas law is punishing those who do it and those who help in it. Legal consequences of women began in 1845 in New York. By the early 1900s, most states had banned abortion. By 1965, all 50 states had outlawed abortion, with some exceptions. And then federal action occurred in 1973, Roe v. Wade, which declared most state anti-abortion laws unconstitutional. The High Court's 7-2 decision established rules based on a pregnancy trimester framework, banning legislative interference in the first trimester, allowing states to regulate during the second trimester and the third trimester, but only when related to maternal health. So that is the Roe v. Wade that we keep hearing about. Now, the two choices are pro-life and pro-choice, which of course simplifies a very complicated thing. No one would claim to be anti-life. No one would claim to be anti-choice. And if you're taking just that one view, you can make a very, very convincing argument, which I'm not going to read through, but it's here, the pro-choice and the National Right to Life Committee, right? Women have the right to live with dignity. Who would say women don't have the right to live with dignity? No one has the right to deny life to someone else. Who would say that you can deny life to someone else? So the two extremes, if you're just reading one, it's very, very convincing. But like we said, it needs to be more nuanced. I don't want to spend the time reading through each of these, but you could see them over here. Those who have not yet asked me to send them the the notes in advance. If you'd like me to do so, just shoot me an email afterwards. I'll be happy to send you this and add you to the list of those that I send to each week. Okay, as can be assumed, the Jewish point is a little bit more nuanced. And again, not going to go through it over here, but source number 5 and 6 speaks about in the secular medical ethics. So there are 4 and then a 5th main point that are discussed. And that is beneficence, that the physicians have to act in the best interest of the patients, non-malfeasance, which is to do no harm. There is justice, that it be provided in a fair and equitable way to all without prejudice. And then there's autonomy, that the patient has the ultimate responsibility and final decision-making capacity. But how does this patient make this decision? How does this patient responsibly exercise this autonomy? There needs to be informed consent, and that's the 5th one. And that with all of this, the patient has given enough information to allow for an educated and reasoned healthcare decision. Once that's been done, whatever the patient decides, it's the patient's body, and that is allowed, and that goes ahead. Judaism teaches, source number 6, that man is charged with being a prudent steward. Man was created in the image of God. His body is the property of the Creator, and we're given custodial rights. And therefore, we have a tremendous responsibility. That is why suicide is considered to be murder. Suicide is considered to be murder. Of course, now we understand that there are all of these emotional, psychological aspects, but one is not allowed to take their own life because we are a steward and we have to act as a responsible steward. So therefore, the Torah, whereas in the secular world, a patient has the right to refuse any and all medical information and intervention, whereas in Judaism, the Torah requires us to choose the most sensible option, the one that a prudent steward would choose. So therefore, we have this responsibility with this understanding that our body is on loan from God. And therefore, we need to take good care of ourselves and take the right steps for it. So what is this prudent stewardship? What is that based upon? So certainly, it is the medical understandings and the medical options. But when it comes to choosing that, as Rabbi writes in source number 7, Judaism is fundamentally a religion of law. Halacha governs virtually every facet of human endeavor. An individual who seeks to find answers with the Jewish tradition can deal with such questions only one way. He must examine them through the prism of halacha. It is in the corpus of Jewish law, as elicited and transmitted from generation to generation, that God has made his will known to man. And that is the bottom line, that our understanding of Torah and halacha is, this is the blueprint, this is the manual for life and the expectations that God has of us, the directions that God is giving to us. So with that introduction, let's move on to sources for abortion in the Torah and the Talmud. Interestingly, in Bereshit, the Torah says, Shafach dam ha'adam ba'adam. If a person spills the blood of a person, but it puts in the word ba'adam, in a person, damo yishafech. If one spills the blood of another person, his blood will be spilled. Why? Ki b'tselem Elokim asat adam. God made man in his own image, and you cannot take the life. Whereas the lives of animals, if it's for a purpose, one can take the lives of animals, but the lives of a human being, one cannot. However, the Gemara zeroes in on the nuanced wording, and that's source number 9. Mishum, in the name of Rabbi Yisroel, they said that Ben Noach and Noach may be put to death, even for the killing of an ubar, even for the killing of a fetus. My Tani, what is his reasoning based on what's the source? It says Shafach Dama Adam Ba'adam. One who spills the blood of a person, literally read, one who spills the blood of a person Ba'adam, in another person. What blood of a person do we have that is in another person? Ezu Adam Shuhu Ba'adam. Which person is inside another person? Zaubar. That is the fetus, Shebema'e Imo, in the mother's womb. So, but the fact that Torah says, Shofech Dam Ha'adam, the person spills the blood of a person, Ba'adam, in a person, that is letting us know, according to Rabbi Yisroel, that killing a person in a person, that is a fetus inside another person, that is considered to be murder. Okay. Another source that we have, according to some, and we'll soon see, is according to Rav Moshe Feinstein, we go right to the 10 Commandments. Lo tirtzach, you shall not murder. And according to some opinions, some Jewish opinions, we know according to the Roman Catholic Church, it's considered to be murder. But according to some Jewish opinions, it's also considered to be murder. And lo tirtzach, number 6 of the 10 Commandments, would apply over here. But then there's another pasuk, which talks about people fighting. And people are fighting. And the wife of one of the combatants jumps into the ring over there to save her husband. And a death blow that was meant for the man hits his pregnant wife, killing her or causing her to miscarry. That's the situation the Torah is describing over here. And let's see source number 11. Chinatsu anashim, when 2 men are fighting, v'nagfu isha hara, and a pregnant woman is harmed, v'yatsu yiladeh, caused her to miscarry, v'lo yiyeh ason, if there is no fatal injury to the woman, ye'anesh, then there is a monetary payment. As the husband will sue for that amount, and the courts and the courts will determine the monetary amount. But if the woman was killed, even though he was not meaning to hit the woman, he meant to hit the man, but he hit the woman and he killed the woman, oh, that's already a capital case. Then then it's a soul for a soul. That's a capital case. So if one kills the woman, that's a capital case. There's no monetary payment, capital punishment. But if one does not kill the woman, but caused her to miscarry, then we don't view that as a capital case, but rather what happens? It's a monetary payment. There are damages. So some psukim, some of our sources seem to view it as murder, and others view it as damaging, but not murder. If it were murder, then normally there is capital punishment for that. nefesh tachat nefesh. One more source that we will see is the Mishnah in Ohalot. And that's discussing abortion in the context when the mother's life is in danger. And there it says that one can take the life of the unborn child in order to save the life of the mother. But once, we'll soon see, let's see the Mishnah ourselves. Ha'isha, shehi makshe le'leid, a woman who is having great difficulty in her birth and her life is threatened. The child can be dismembered, cut apart in her womb. Umotziin ota, and will take out this now dead fetus. Avarim, limb by limb, in order to save the life of the mother. Mitnei shechayeha kodmin lechayav, because her life takes precedence over the life of the fetus. Yatsarubo, but once most of the child has already exited, then einogenbo, we cannot touch him, we cannot cause that child any harm. She'ein dochen nefesh mipnei nefesh. We don't put aside one life in order to save another life. But before the child is born, we will push aside the child's life. We will sacrifice the life of the child in order to save the life of the mother. So we see that the life of this unborn child does not equal the life of someone already born. But of course, under normal circumstances where there is no threat to the mother, then it would seem from this Mishnah, we would not allow the dismemberment, the abortion of this fetus. It's only when the mother's life is in danger. And then again, that's only before the child is mostly born. Most of the body of the child has already exited. So we see the importance of the baby's life, but it's not equal to the life of the living mother. And we therefore, according to the Mishnah, would sacrifice the life of the baby to save the life of the mother. So as we see from these different sources and which ones we emphasize, we come to part number 3, the prohibition
Rabbi,
against abortion. Is it murder? Is it an issue of potential life? Is it damages? Yes, Chaya Rivka.
doesn't it depend upon the age of the child? What if the child is, let's say, in the 7th month or 8th month and
Okay.
is alive? And can't they just take the child out and do that? Do they have to kill the child? I can see, I don't agree, of course. I'm not going to talk about it, but because I don't know enough. But, if the child is 1 month, or the baby is 1 month old, inside the mother, or 2 months, not formed yet, it's just sort of a
Yeah.
blob. But if the child is already
Yes,
able to
we
move,
will come to that, Chaya Rivka.
okay, all right,
We will come to that.
all right.
Right? Because Roe v. Wade divided things up by the trimesters. Okay? We're going to see where Halacha, where our sources might make a dividing line in terms of the child's development. That's a good point, and we're going to come to that. Okay. So source number 13 is Rambam. is Maimonides. One second. Okay. Maimonides speaks about the concept of a rodef. A rodef is someone that is pursuing someone else. Rodef means to pursue, to chase after. A rodef is pursuing someone else to try to kill that person. The halacha is that you can take the life of the pursuer in order to save the life of the person that is being chased. One can take the life of the rodef to save the life of the one that is being chased. Not only that, but another place where that applies is also if a man is trying to rape, to violate a woman. If the only way to stop him from doing that is by taking his life, then according to the Torah, one would take his life to prevent him from violating a woman. Okay, so the Rambam writes, let's see that in source number 13. Too many papers here, they're all confused. Okay, the Rambam says, Harezu mitzvot lo ta'aseh. It is one of the prohibitions. Shelo lachus al nefesh harodef. We're not allowed to be concerned, how could I take the life of this person who's running with a knife or running with a gun? How could I take his life? Lefichach, therefore, horu chachamim, our sages taught, sha'ubra, that this fetus, shehi maksheh leilei, when there are these difficulties during the birth process, and the mother is unable to give birth, and it's endangering the life of the mother, mutar lachtoch ha'uba b'me'ah. One is allowed to abort, and to cut that fetus in the womb, bein besam, whether it's by using some sort of a poison, a medication, bein biyad, whether it's with hands physically going in there, because it's as if he is chasing after this mother to kill the mother. So Rav Moshe Feinstein, who is one of the most foremost halachic authorities in recent times, 20th century, he understands that by invoking the rationale of a rodef to permit the killing of a fetus, the Rambam is teaching us that, why do I need rodef? It must be that the child is considered like a living person. So how can you kill a living person to save the life of another person? Oh, only if that individual is a rodef. Therefore, he says, Rav Moshe rules, we're not actually threatening the life of the mother. Killing the fetus, abortion, would be tantamount to murder. And that's what he writes in his Igros Moshe, the letters of Moshe, in the written response that he gave. He wrote, source number 14, abortion is forbidden as murder both for Gentiles and Jews. Therefore, the law is that there's a complete prohibition of murder. Derived from the verse, he goes to the 10 Commandments. Lo tirtzach, you shall not murder, even regarding a fetus. So what does he do then with the psukim that spoke about a monetary payment? The case of the altercation between the two men, and the pregnant wife of one of them enters the fray, and she ends up getting hit, and she miscarries. There we don't view it as a capital case. If she dies, if he hits her and she dies, capital case, no monetary payment. Hits her, she miscarries, but she lives, not a capital case, monetary payment. How does Rav Moshe understand that source, those verses? He said, except the killer is not liable for the death penalty. He understands it as murder, but it's a case of murder where we don't apply capital punishment. If there is no capital punishment, so then there will be monetary damage payments that need to be made. So he views it as murder, but that is an exception, that normally murder is a capital case. The murder of a fetus is murder, but it's an exception. Patura hargo mimisa. The one who killed that fetus is not liable for a death penalty. That is one approach, and that's Rav Moshe Feinstein's approach. There's another way of looking at it, and that is that the issue is the holiness of potential life. It's not full life, it's not murder, but it's something that we take so seriously because potential life. And the Mishnah in Yoma, discussing Yom Kippur, says, Ubra shehiricha, if a pregnant woman smells a certain food and has a very strong craving for that food, machilinota, will give her to drink from that, whatever it is, acha tashiv nafsha, until she calms down. Excuse me. I have my post Simchas Torah voice, which is somewhat hampered. So we feed the pregnant woman on Yom Kippur until she's calming. Who are we concerned about over here? Whose health is the Mishnah concerned? Is it just the mother's, or is it also the child's? And the Sefer Halacha Gedolos explains that we're talking about when the woman's life is in danger, nothing to talk about. Of course, we override just about all the mitzvot in order to save a life. But the mother's life is not in danger. But the concern is that she might miscarry. So even though we never know how viable this fetus is, but we will violate Yom Kippur on behalf of this fetus. Ramban, not Maimonides, but Nachmanides, writes that we're clearly understanding the mother should violate Yom Kippur, even if it's just for the health of the child. Similarly, Ramban writes in number 16, we would also desecrate Shabbat. If there's no danger to the mother's life, but we're concerned about the fetus, we will desecrate Shabbos in order to save the life. Listen how he terms that in source 16. For the Torah says to violate one Shabbat, since if he is saved, he will have the chance to observe many more Shabbatot. Therefore, even for the sake of a fetus less than 40 days, coming to your point, Chaya Rivka, 40 days is a milestone point. That is of yet no life at all. We would still violate Shabbat in accordance with the opinion of the Halachot Gedolot. But it's very interesting. He says the reason that he gave, why are we going to violate the Shabbat to save the life? In order, we'll break one Shabbos so that the child can observe many Shabbatot. So Shmuel Vosner, another great posek of the 20th century, he writes as follows, number 17. It is obvious that since it is permissible, according to Torah law, to desecrate Shabbat in order to facilitate the normal development of a fetus into a person obligated to keep mitzvot, then even more so is forbidden according to Torah law to wantonly kill it for that very same reason. But that does not make doing so actual murder. See, he views it as a potential life. And we're not allowed to snuff out a potential life. That is how he is viewing it. Not as murder, but as potential life. Thirdly, we have source number 18, which focuses on that last source that we had about the fight, the altercation. And if the pregnant woman is killed, it's a capital case. If the woman is hit and miscarries, but she remains alive, then it's monetary. See, he understands in his Tshuvat Maharit, abortion is a form of injury. That is the issue over here, according to him. The issue is injury. As he writes, Tosfot writes there that although one is not liable for killing a fetus, it is not permitted. The base of the prohibition is the law forbidding causing injury. So that's viewing it as not murder, not taking potential life, but injury. And once we're talking about injury, then it's very, very different. Then we view that in a very, very different manner. However, no matter what the prohibition is, before we get to the next section, which is when would abortion be permissible according to Halacha, and as we can imagine from the sources that we've seen, there's going to be an array of different opinions over here. There's going to be a wide array. And certainly with something like this, one doesn't make a decision based on these sources, but one needs to speak to a competent halachic authority to take into account the particulars of that special, unique situation, because every situation is unique. But the Zohar writes in general, how uber the mitarbra atate v'goron lekatalale b'mada sate b'neinad kashbrucho v'unatei delay. One who causes a fetus in the womb of its mother to be killed destroys God's work and craftsmanship and causes the Shekhinah istalek me alma. It causes the divine presence to be pushed out of this world, pushes away God's presence. Every person is in the image of God. Every person is a different reflection and refraction of God. And by taking the life of a child, by aborting, we are pushing away that reflection, that refraction of God's light in this world. So as we said, the Jewish view is nuanced. It's not on demand, as some of the pro-choice will promote, and it's not absolutely, it's not murder. It's not never allowed, as many of the pro-lifers would like to promote. So let's first touch upon the point that Chaya Rivka brought up, and that is, are there different points in pregnancy? And we have a very, very interesting halacha. The halacha is a kohen, we know, is allowed to eat teruma. Teruma is the tithe that's separated from the produce. Only a kohen and his family is allowed to eat that. His wife is allowed to eat it. His children are allowed to eat it. His sons are kohanim in their own right. His daughters are allowed to eat it. But if the daughter gets married and she marries a non-kohen, she is no longer able to eat the truma of her father's house. If she becomes divorced or widowed, then she will return to her father's house, so to speak, and can once again eat truma. If she has a child from this non-kohen spouse, husband, then even if she were to become widowed or divorced, she is still considered connected to the non-kohen household through that son or child that she has, and she is not allowed to go back to her father's household's truma. How about the Gemara discusses the following case? Let's look at source number 20. The daughter of a priest, a Kohen, who married an Israelite, a non-priest, and he died immediately following the consummation of the marriage. She may immerse in the mikveh and eat truma that evening. She's no longer married to that Israelite, and she doesn't have a child. However, Rav Chizda said she may immerse herself and eat for 40 days. Why 40 days? If she is not pregnant, she's not pregnant. So she has returned to her father's household and is therefore allowed to eat the truma. And if she is pregnant, for 40 days, it's considered maya ba'alma. Maya, Aramaic for mayim, water. The fetus is not yet considered to be a fetus. It's considered to be maya ba'alma, water. And therefore, that would not prevent her from eating the truma of her father's house. After 40 days, if she's pregnant from that consummation of the marriage, after 40 days, then she cannot eat the truma of her father's household because she's still connected to her, in this case, late husband's household, because she is carrying his child. So we see this concept that for the first 40 days, the Gemara calls the Vlad not yet a person, not even a potential, well, we'll have to see about that, but considers it to be Maya Ba'alma, water. So now, if you're holding that abortion is murder, you can't murder water. It would not be murder at that point. But if the issue is potential life, then even within the first 40 days, we have this potential life. So let's go to source number 21. According to Rav Moshe Feinstein, who says that it's murder, the only time that it will be allowed, let's see 21, since abortion is forbidden as murder, therefore the law is that there is a complete prohibition of murder, derived from the verse 10 Commandments, lo tirtzach, you shall not murder, even regarding a fetus. It will be forbidden to kill it, even to save someone's life. You cannot kill the fetus in order to extract an organ or extract something to save someone else's life. The exception would be to save the life of the mother during childbirth, not for any other need of the mother. But to save the life of the mother, that would be allowed because, as the Rambam said, the child at that point is considered to be a rodef, pursuing the life of the mother. So that's when an abortion could be done in order to save the life of the mother. However, the Tzitz Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer Yehuda Waldenberg, has a very, very different take on it. He writes, if there is a danger to the mother from continuing the pregnancy, one should permit abortion without hesitation. Also, if her health So his wording is if there's a danger to the mother. Also, if her health is poor, and to cure her or to relieve her from great pain, it is necessary to abort the fetus, even if she is not in actual danger. Health is poor, cure her, relieve her from great pain. Even if she's not in actual danger, there is room to permit it based on the halachic authorities' evaluation of the situation. Again, it's not a carte blanche, even according to the Tzitz Eliezer, but he views it, it would seem, as potential life, not murder, and therefore there is room to allow an abortion when there is this harm that it will cause to the mother, even though we're not talking about the mother being in danger. How about psychological factors? Right? We can only imagine the horror of a healthy woman being forced to go full term and carry the child of a child that was born from rape, a child that was born from incest. I mean, the psychological damage that can have on a person. And that is also can be taken into account. Judaism recognizes psychiatric as well as physical factors in evaluating the potential threat that the fetus poses to the mother. However, the danger posed by the fetus, physical and emotional, must be both probable and substantial to justify abortion. The degree of mental illness that must be present to justify termination of a pregnancy has been widely debated by rabbinic scholars without a clear consensus of opinion regarding the exact criteria for permitting abortion in such instances. All agree if it would cause it to become suicidal, grounds for abortion. Short of that, there is a wide range of views. To what degree we take into account. Rav Moshe would not ascribe to this, but within the Tzitz Eliezer of harm to the mother, there is room to discuss the physical harm, emotional harm, psychological harm. All of that can be and would be part of the halachic decisions that would be issued. Once again, let's look at Tay-Sachs disease. Now, for the most part, there is something called Dor Yisharim, that a boy and girl, Jewish boys and Tay-Sachs is a genetic disease that is passed down through carriers for mostly the Jewish Ashkenazic community. And Dor Yisharim has the potential groom and bride go for a blood test, ideally early on in their relationship. And that way, before it gets too involved, that if they are both carriers, they'll be warned not a good idea to pursue. Right? If only one is a carrier, it's not an issue. If both are carriers, then we have a problem. But Tay-Sachs used to be something that ravaged the Jewish community. And Rav Moshe, as we can understand, his view of it as murder, he ruled 24, even for children who the doctors predict a very short lifespan, children born with Tay-Sachs, it will be forbidden, right? And it can be diagnosed prenatally. It will be forbidden since there's no danger to the mother and the infant is not a rodef. One cannot permit an abortion even though there is a very great suffering involved. Okay, that's his view. We go to 25, the Tzitz Eliezer would disagree. And he says abortion within the first 40 days of the pregnancy, and also before the fetus has completed 3 months, is a much less severe issue than later in pregnancy. So he invokes both the 40 days and also the idea of the first trimester. Therefore, it is possible to permit an abortion within this time period, as long as there are as of yet no fetal movements. If there is an established risk, the child will be deformed and suffer great pain. Regarding Tay-Sachs, after seriously examining all the facts concerning this serious question, in my humble opinion, based on what I've already clarified in the Tzitz Eliezer, it will be possible to permit performing an abortion up until the 7th month in this unique circumstance where the consequence of continuing the pregnancy are so severe. The abortion must be performed in a manner that there will be no danger for the mother. From 7 months and on, the matter is much more severe. So we have Rav Moshe, we have the Tzitz Eliezer. Now, there are situations that I know of where a woman was pregnant and there was serious deformities that showed up in the ultrasound, that this child, at best, if it would make it to full term and birth, the child would live probably a matter of minutes or hours. The most would live up to a week. And in those situations, a situation that I know of, a ruling was given by the foremost halakhic authority in Israel that the couple could go ahead with an abortion. But over there, the idea is that even though it might have been past 40 days, it was non-compatible with life. So it's not murder if it's non-compatible with life. It's not a potential life if it's non-compatible with life. Let's now go to the public policy debate and Jewish law. Okay. So I'm just going to go through quickly, not going to read through the full thing. Secular law is primarily concerned, number 26, with who gets to make a decision. That's what the courts are going to decide. Who has the legal authority to make the decision? And once they have legal authority, once that's been clarified, they make whatever decision they want to make. Jewish law asks, what is the proper decision to make? Because, as we started off saying, we understand that we need to be the prudent steward of this life, of this body that Hashem gives to us. Now, how are we supposed to get involved when it comes to our Jewish law and secular law? So there we have some very interesting precedents. Number 27, in 1977, Moshe Feinstein was asked what changes Orthodox Judaism should seek from the New York State government on the issue of the time of death. This is when brain death was becoming more accepted in the medical and scientific fields. And that does impose certain things on individuals. So Rav Moshe's response was that, sorry, again, my paper's a little confused here. Rav Moshe's response was very interesting. It was very nuanced. The public policy advocated by Feinstein in the concept time of death was the preferred one. One of the Orthodox Judaism seeking to allow Jews to follow Jewish tradition without forcing our standards on non-believers. Rav Moshe did not try to say, no, the Jewish way is what needs to be instituted as the law. Not at all. But the law should allow for the Jews to follow their religious dictates. So whatever the law, whatever the medical scientific society will feel should be the time of death, there should be an exclusion given for those, not just Jews, but for any person who, based upon their religious tenets and beliefs, does not want to ascribe to brain death as being the point of death, even though the heart is still beating and the person might still be breathing. So that's the approach that we try to take. We don't want to take our religious view and say, you've got to make that the law. But the law that you make should allow for us to follow our religious beliefs. And this came up again with Agudath Israel when it came to Roe v. Wade. And it's worth to read this. Agudath Israel has taken positions on a host of legislative and public policy issues that touch upon fundamental moral concerns and impact upon the family unit. One illustration is the approach in this area of abortion. Jewish tradition teaches that a human fetus has status and dignity, and termination of pregnancy raises profound moral concerns. Agudath Israel accordingly has urged the Supreme Court to reconsider its holding in Roe v. Wade and supports legislation that restricts abortion on demand. At the same time, in line with the support for religious freedom, it opposed initiatives that would make abortion unlawful, even in situations where termination of pregnancy is mandated by religious law, as it is, for example, under Sinaitic Jewish law, when pregnancy endangers the life of the mother. So it should not be taken lightly. It should not be, get an abortion. But it should not be like I believe it is in Texas, the Texas law. It should not be criminalized, because there are certain situations where actually halacha not only allows for it, but would demand it. And there are many situations where halacha would not demand it, but based on the particular personal situation, where halacha would allow for it. So when it comes to these legislative policies, our approach is there should not to impose our view on society at large, but to make sure that we have our ability to live and act according to our Torah, according to our, what we understand as divine guidance when it comes to such matters. But it's important, even the Tzitz Eliezer, Rav Waldenberg, who is the most lenient opinion amongst the Torah sages, he writes, all Jewish people are strictly commanded not to behave in a casual manner regarding the termination of pregnancy. There's a great responsibility placed both on the one asking the halachic question and on the one being asked. I'll just conclude with a story that Rabbi Frand told involving Rosh Shlomo Zalman. A woman interested in Judaism went to study in Jerusalem. She's learning about Torah mitzvot, making progress. One day she announces to her teacher she has decided to leave. Why? I'm pregnant, she explained. I want to terminate my pregnancy. Why do you want to terminate your pregnancy? I want to embark on a career. This pregnancy is just going to make things much too difficult. What does your husband say? He stands by my decision. The teacher sees that he is out of his depth. Listen, if you're going to have an abortion, you should be aware it's a dangerous procedure. Let me take you to a great rabbi, a holy person. Let's ask him for a blessing to get you through this safely. I'll go along to act as your interpreter. The woman agrees, and the teacher takes it to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach of blessed memory, who was one of the great poskim in Israel, of the Jewish people, actually in the land of Israel, lived in Yerushalayim, and also one of the warmest, most embracing people that I had the privilege of ever meeting. I mentioned before, in the past, I would take boys from my yeshiva to him, and the way that he would just warmly embrace every one of them, it was legendary. She came to Rav Shlomo Zalman. I would like a blessing, she said. You see, I'm going to terminate my pregnancy. Why would you want to terminate your pregnancy? He asked. Because I want to pursue a career, she said. What kind of career do you want to pursue? I want to become a doctor. And why do you want to become a doctor? Because a doctor saves lives. Rav Shlomo Zalman smiled and said, really? And what is so important about saving lives? The woman is startled by the question. She gives him a strange look, wondering if he might be a bit senile. What's important about saving lives? Saving a life is the most important thing in this world. All of a sudden, the significance of what she has just said hits her. She looks at Rav Shlomo Zalman. Then she points to her abdomen. You don't mean this, do you? Rav Shlomo Zalman said, it can become a life, a living human being. The woman nods in acceptance. That's the human aspect to all of this. And that's where we really need to be focused. But there are situations on one end of the extreme where the mother's life's in danger. According to Halacha, nothing to talk about. Of course, we abort the child and save the life of the mother. Where it's life-threatening, perhaps to the mother, or painful for the mother, there are those that allow it. When the child is non-compatible with life, then I think almost across the board, it's not murder and it's not snuffing out a potential life. When there are serious emotional, psychiatric concerns, all of these things need to be taken into account. As I said when we started, as always, the Torah approach is very nuanced. It's not black, it's not white. We are pro-choice. We are pro-life, but not the extremes, not the fringe of either of those. Like I said before, there's no one who's against choice. There's no one who is against life. But it's the nuances in terms of abortion that need to be applied, that the Torah applies. And if a person is faced with such a question, one needs to speak to a rabbi that they trust, who, for the most part, would realize this is going over their own head, and would help them to present their question to one of the heavyweights that we have in the world today, who take into account all of these factors. And through that, we do our best to get to what a Navi, what a prophet would say, meaning, what is it that Hashem wants of me in this situation? Okay, my friends, we'll call it over here. Good to see everybody. Next week, I am away, but we will resume all classes and lunch and learn. So not next week, not the first week in October, but lunch and learn will resume. So not, where am I? Not the 7th, but the 14th. Next week I'm away in terms of classes, but the week of October 11th is when we will re-engage fully. And I want to encourage all of you, I'm with you. I want to encourage all of you to Monday nights. It's going to be at 6:45 for the first week or two until the davening time gets earlier. For about 45 minutes, we're going to be studying Derech Hashem, which is a fascinating exposition of the way God interacts with this world, our understanding of God's actions, our actions, the interplay between the two. Really, really a fascinating sefer to discuss and open for a lot of discussions and to learn through. Shabbat Shalom, Deborah. Thank you. Yes, Chaya Rivka.
I have two questions, Rabbi. The first one is a question. The second one is a personal thing that happened within the family. The question is that years ago, let's say over 100 years ago, they had no clue as to whether the child has brain damage or anything like that. So the medical profession is learning more and more and more and more about the health of the fetus. Does that mean that the woman who wants to just get rid of the child has less of an argument because the doctors have more reason to say keep the child or not keep the child because they know more facts about what's going on within the fetus.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can't just automatically say let's get rid of it so easily is what I'm saying.
Can according to the laws in most states today, a person can just decide to get rid of it. According to Halacha, that would not be an accepted approach.
Okay, now in my family, I heard the story, and I always wondered if it was correct. It was a depression. The family had, the husband wasn't working, they had no money, and the woman got pregnant, and she had an abortion. And she brought in a doctor, and it turned out to be twins. And the doctor was so upset that he had to get rid of 2 children.
Yeah.
And I was always wondering, in a situation like that, where there was literally no money in the depression and no one was working, would that be considered okay? I didn't quite hear all your arguments or understand.
I don't. Depression meaning emotional depression or economic depression?
It was about 1930-ish.
So I'll tell. I admit it. There's a story that a child born in 1929 to an impoverished family. Just a second. Born to an impoverished family, and
my phone is ringing.
Yeah, I'm going to mute you as I speak, Chaya. I'm sorry. A person was born to an impoverished family, and they wanted to abort. This is in Israel. It cost 2 lira for an abortion. The family was so impoverished, they didn't have the 2 lira. They had 1 lira and 20 agurot. But the doctor said, no, without the 2 lira, we can't do it. I won't do it. The child who was born, his name was Rafi Eitan. Rafi Eitan was the chief of staff of Israeli army and was a decorated war hero for Israel. For financial reasons, we don't say, oh, listen, just not have the baby. For financial reasons, there are, I mentioned there's an organization in Israel, or an organization here also, which will help the mother, the parents, with the costs through pregnancy, through labor. If they want to keep the child, they'll help with the costs afterwards, help them get started. If they don't want, then they'll help with it. There's so many families who can have children, who would love to have a child. I'm not saying it's easy to give up your own flesh and blood, but either way, one is giving up their own flesh and blood, right? Let their own flesh and blood have a good life with someone who can provide it if they can't provide it.
Yes, I always thought they should have had the babies and had them up for adoption, but they didn't do that. They chose to get rid of the babies.
Look, then again, I can understand the psychological torment if we're talking about a rape or an incest.
No, it was regular
of carrying this reminder of that. I can understand that also. So we shouldn't know of such things. But when it does happen, the questions need to be
Yeah. Rabbi?
It was 90 years ago.
Yeah. Correct. Yes, Ken.
Okay. Do any of the sages discuss timing of addition of the soul, or consider when the soul is being added as being important?
You know, these are things that we can't really know. There are different opinions when the soul comes in. There are different opinions. You know, but
Okay.
when we're trying to determine a halacha, we need to look at the concrete sources and work with that. Yeah, but that's
Okay.
that's a very important factor, and also when determining time of death, the brain death that we touched upon briefly. When does the soul leave? Right? You know, these are things that that medical science cannot possibly provide us. Yeah, and therein lies the mystery and how complicated it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, my
Another thing, could you send me the reference material for
sure,
this? I'm not on
sure.
your list at present.
As soon as I sign off. If anybody else did
Okay.
not get it, would like me to send it to them, I'm very happy to do so. Just let me know. You can let me know now or send me an email, and I'm happy to send it over.
Thank
Okay,
you.
my friends. Good seeing everybody. Hope everybody had a beautiful holiday season. And now we have to roll up our sleeves and get to work. Okay, everybody. Good seeing you all.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Alan, is that you? Ah, AB. Good to see you, Alan.
Yeah, I actually did have a question, but I'm not going to ask.
You're more than welcome to ask it, Alan. Class is dismissed. I'm staying on with Alan's question.
Now so in Kohelet there were a few instances, if I remember correctly, where Shlomo said that it's better is he who hasn't been born than he who has. Would that be considered a source for the other side?
No, it would not. And I discussed that. I don't know. I spoke quite a few times. But I discussed, we always speak about the sanctity of life, the importance of life, and yet we have a machloket, a dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Is it tov for a person to be being created or not? And the conclusion was tov. It's tov that we weren't created. How do we align that with our importance, the gift of life, the importance of life, everything to save a life? So the emphasis there is on tov. It would have been easier. It's certainly good if God gave us life. It's good for us to have life. But the tov means, sorry, it doesn't use the word tov. It uses the word noach. It would have been easier, more comfortable, without all these ups and downs, the vicissitudes of life. But tov, it certainly is good. It's certainly good. And if Hashem allowed the miracle of conception, then we should recognize that as a miracle, and it's tov. It's tov ma'od. It's very good.
All right.
Okay, Alan. Good having you join us, my friend.
Bye.
Okay, everybody. A good day.